Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is I, Matt Yancik, the founder and head game master here at the multinational conglomerate known as Manufactured Myth and Legerdemain, and I am your host for tonight's festivities here on Role Player with 1,000 Faces. And as the kids say these days, folks, it has been a minute, so I need to sincerely apologize. I have not been streaming in I think it's been about 16 years since actually YouTube was before it was invented. I've been absent, and trust me, I do have a good reason for it, and I do hope to get back to my regular streams. Basically, what has happened is that I have gone back to teaching. So it was the summertime. And I was sort of enjoying the free time and the sunshine here in Cambridge, and I actually got like an idea in my head that I wanted to work on a role-playing game, start writing on my own RPG, and I was partly inspired by tonight's guest, actually following along with his progress sort of closely. And I thought, oh my goodness, well, it's really easy. I sat down and I did a quick calculation. I was like, okay, 2 hours a night, 8 hours of teaching, an hour of grading, 5 days a week, 8 hours on Saturday, 6 hours on Sunday. Everything's going to be just fine. And it wasn't. It was definitely a work overload for me, and it slowed me down, and it's been a little bit difficult for me to get back into the groove. So one of the things that kind of kept me kind of going and kept me excited about what I was working on, which by the way is it's a little game here called I can't point properly, game called Bone and Metal. It's with DM Scotty's Easy D6 coming soon to retail store or Kickstarter or drive-through RPG or somewhere, or just send me some money and I'll send it to you. So one of the things that kind of kept me going on that, because I did feel the overload, was watching the progress of other people that are not, I don't want to say in a similar situation because everybody's got like a different thing going on, but watching people that are maybe of a similar interest, have day jobs, and that are working on projects out of a love and passion and interest in their free time. And that was kind of one of the things that's, in a way, kept me going. So recently I've been playing, you all kind of know that I love the Cypher system, but I've become good friends with and I've really started to enjoy his game system, DM Scotty McFarland, his Easy D6 system. And I've been playing that game like crazy, along with Cypher. And I have been noticing that one of the great things about DM Scotty's system isn't necessarily the mechanics. It's not necessarily a setting. It's not necessarily like a particular thing, other than the community that's kind of built up around it. And I feel like because it's a relatively smaller community, I've been able to sort of get to know the people in and around Easy D6, and some of them are publishing like officially, and some of them are just sort of submitting to the Easy D6 Discord or Facebook page, or DM's Craft. And one of those people that I've been kind of watching, the one that has been inspiring me and that is on the program tonight, is Dr. Bruce Ballon, a professor, a teacher, and psychiatrist with the University of Toronto up in Canada, which is like America Light. It's a healthier version of America. And I've been sort of watching what he's been working on. And it's really cool. One of the things that first sort of caught my attention about it was we were sort of trading back and forth with like little quotes about 80s action movies and things like that. Bruce has written, created, and just done all the legwork, put together a team. Oh boy, not unlike an espionage, not unlike an impossible mission or a Mission Impossible, whichever game you happen to play. He has put together a team, put together a great game called Assignment Danger, which is for DM Scotty McFarland's Easy D6 system. And flipping through it, I was just like drooling with happiness. Like it's filled with like quotes from all the movies that I used to watch, book characters, film characters. And I sort of felt like I was talking to somebody or I was getting something from somebody that I kind of had like a rapport with. We'll find out if there's a rapport here on the program, hopefully. But I'm really excited, without further ado, to welcome to the program someone who I hope will be my future accountability partner in RPG design and help me stay the course, Dr. Bruce Ballon. Dr. Ballon, thank you so much for coming on the big show tonight. I appreciate having you here.
Thank you for having me. But first of all, do you want to be called Mr. Yancik or Matt?
Oh, I knew this conversation might happen. You can totally call me Matt.
You should call me Bruce.
Oh, okay. I always feel, yeah, I feel a little bit like, I get that old Dr. Evil quote in my head. I didn't go to 8 years of evil medical school to be called Mr. Evil.
Yeah.
But I'll call you Bruce, just for purposes of tonight's program. So can you tell me a little bit about RPGs? What got you started on RPGs?
That's a good question. It goes way, way back to when Dungeons and Dragons first came out. I am that old. So not as old as Cthulhu, but I go back to the early 70s. I was born in the late 60s. So part of the thing is I was always attracted to fantasy, horror, science fiction, all that wonderful stuff. Read too many books I probably shouldn't have, and my parents let me stay up way too late to watch like chiller thriller films and things like that. And so into all sorts of interesting things, magic. And what happened is there was these stores. I don't know how old you are, but way back there was places like Zellers and Safeways and all that, and they would have these little packages with either comic books, 3 comic books, and they also had all these like Dungeons and Dragons when it first came out, the little box set. Grabbed it, loved it. It was very interesting. I started playing with some friends in high school. I ended up the game master or the dungeon master, however you want to call it back then, but it was just so interesting because it was this narrative cool game. It was like nothing else we'd ever played, where you just got into it. And it got me into my whole fascination with the whole concept of perception and immersion into simulated worlds. There's a reason I ended up in psychiatry, not totally due to role-playing games, but there's a whole theme that all ties together. But I remember playing the game, and we were playing the Village of Hamlet way back. And I remember one of the character players, you know, they're going down, a green slime falls on him, and he got eaten up and died. Guy had nightmares for the next few days because it was pretty powerful stuff back then. I'm going, this is really fascinating, even back then, about the power of getting into these games. And because, again, I love movies, heavily into movies and TV, and you can immerse yourself. But what was neat about the role-playing games was the interactivity, that you're building the game with other people at the same time. And that got hooked me from childhood on to today.
In those early days, because actually what you described was something very similar to what I went through myself. I know the hobby shops and like the game stores that you're sort of talking, or the comic shops that you're kind of talking about. I remember though, like one of the first ones I picked up was Marvel Superheroes, and I also picked up the Dungeon Master's Guide it was a second edition, because I didn't quite understand exactly what the roles were and what I was supposed to do. Was that something that you kind of, that clicked with you from the beginning, or was that something that you kind of experimented with and you sort of eventually figured out?
Well, again, I didn't go for the advanced. You're talking about like the advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I just had the little box set that came with your basic rules, which was cool, with the little dragon on the treasure pile. And B1, not even B2. I had B1. into the unknown. And then I got B2 after Keep on the Borderlands. But so it's like it was real basic. And also the nice thing that Gary Gygax did was he gave lots of information on how to run the scenarios. They were bare bones with lots of room, and this is how to do it. And especially B2, Keep on the Borderlands, which is one of my favorite scenarios of all time that I keep coming back to and resetting it in different formats all the time, was here's your base, here's some places to adventure, here's some things. Oh, by the way, monsters aren't stupid. They have tactics. And this goes on. And here's some things. And then he left it to you to run with. So it wasn't overdone, but he didn't leave you hanging. So it was a really good starter. And myself and my gang back then, friends who did it, like got right into it right away. It was, yeah. To start with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons off the bat, when you get a tome this thick, which is where we'll probably end up talking about Easy D6 at some point, which is why I love Easy D6, is it's not overkill. Dungeons and Dragons, as it's even evolved over time, to me, is it went back to its wargaming roots. I guess, like Dungeons and Dragons came from chainmail and some additional things from, going blank, because it wasn't just Gary, it was
Dave Arneson.
This guy did Blackmoor.
Oh my God. Now I feel like I need to have my card revoked because I've got names that are popping into my head.
Me too. I'll just claim it's my age.
But they're not right. Yeah, they're not the right names.
He's who brought in, let's play the individual things besides just these units, and then it all developed into these things. But I think that's part of the thing about like a game like Easy D6, which frees you from all the crunch. And I think there's some players who still love crunch. But to me, it's like I'm building an army, even if it's a one-person army. And I'm going to do all these different things. And you have the giant book of rules, like what happens if he's standing over here on the left while the sun's over there, while the ogre is actually in some sort of like rage? Okay, 6 hours later, we figured out what you should roll. So Dungeons and Dragons Advanced made sense because most of us started with the basic things, then we graduated into it. So it was a slow absorption.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny that you mentioned that because the reason I asked is because I didn't get it. Like I started with Marvel Superheroes, and to me, I played it like a board game, and I played it in an adversarial way with my little sister, right? So we were sitting in the back of the car on a long drive, and I put out the big map, and because it had the map, even though I recognize now I think they called them battle. I can't remember what they called them, but like. I wasn't able to make that leap to narrative, I think, because then I jumped to like the Dungeon Master's Guide, which is not even the guide that gives you the real rules. Those are just like the optional things. And I think I always got very confused. And it wasn't until I actually played a game of Tunnels and Trolls with a few buddies who I actually still, like, if you tune into the streams, I still play with them, that I started, and I saw someone else kind of model it, that I started to understand. And I think what you mentioned about the rules, like had I not had buddies to play with, I don't think I could have jumped into DM or GM or whatever unless I'd seen someone else do it first. And that barrier to entry of a book, or in the case of D&D, it's like 3 books you have to kind of buy, was really hard for me to climb over. So I really identify, and I did end up, by the way, getting the red box. And I kind of the one with the crayons and the dice that you and I did end up understand, like I was able to absorb that. Those were small little books that I could actually look through, and they're relatively simple by comparison.
And that's the other good thing about, I think, role-playing games. They can be simple. You can make it complex, but the whole thing is with basic good foundations and good guidelines, you'll have a fun time. Because I think what we're talking about is there's between like a regular board game where, okay, what is the point? Oh, we are either going to win or lose. Either as a group or individual. This is all about experience. It's like watching a movie. I don't know if the people are going to live or die. I want them maybe to live, or maybe I want them to die, but actually I'm just going to watch and have the passive experience.
Mm.
This is an interactive experience. And it's like realizing it's not about winning or losing your goal. It's like what actually happened, the adventures, the fun, the interesting things that occurred, and then having a debrief after. Because part of it is like, okay, we ended it, but boy, that was fun. And then you reminisce and you talk about it, and that was so interesting.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
because it's like, again, if you're going on a vacation or a journey into, let's say, Machu Picchu or something, you're gonna have an experience and you do things and you talk about it. But here we're doing in theater of the mind.
Yeah.
But the theater of the mind is still a sense of reality of people going in and having actual experiences and enjoying it.
So was it like your primary form of fun, like in the way that some people build models or some people collect comics or
For a
somebody?
while,
Was that
yes.
kind of your?
Yeah, through teenage years. Although, yeah, role-playing games. The one that actually kind of supplanted D&D early on, though, was Call of Cthulhu, because that's even more narrative and really interesting to me because it really kind of demonstrated it's not about having like a giant sword, a +5 holy avenger, and it's like, nah, if you do something silly, you'll just be destroyed. And in fact,
Mm.
sometimes you're just going to be destroyed anyways. Your goal is not to survive and get gold. It's like save the world or save somebody or push off some disaster, but there's things beyond you. But I had already read the Cthulhu stuff as a little kid before the game came out. I was like, what?
Oh, really?
I didn't even know people knew about this at that
Right.
time. I thought, like, it's like, really? A Cthulhu game?
Yeah.
I was so impressed. And I know that's like in some parts of the world is way more popular than Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
It's the number one game.
Was there anything else at the time that was kind of driving you or inspiring you or caught your attention, like maybe someone that influenced you or something? Was it film? Like,
It was
because
still
there's so
TV
many.
and movies. Like I grew up with watching Twilight Zone,
Mm.
The Prisoner TV show, Carl Kolchak, The Night Stalker, Rockford. Like I was growing up in the 70s, but they had such cool things. And as I said, I watched way too many horror films and sci-fi stuff that it's like, this is cool. But then these role-playing games, it's like, oh, this is cool. I can actually not just watch it. We can interact and like bring these things to life.
Mm.
So like, Gamma World was one of my favorite
Mm.
role-playing games too. Again, when it first came out, it's just one booklet, not 10 million rules.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I can be a talking like I don't know, a talking bunny rabbit that can twist metal and things like that. Isn't that
Right.
interesting? But it was just a lot of fun times back there. The early role-playing game stuff. It was just a bonanza of interesting things rolling out
Mm.
at that time. And
Um,
we had time too, because again, it's not like I had a family and kids and all that sort of things because I did pause for a while. I only came back to this thing back in the 20, like thanks to COVID or just around
mm.
COVID, that brought me back into role playing. Because again, life does take up its time with other things.
Right.
But as a kid and a teenager and all that, we didn't have iPhones and video games back then too.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we'd have friends who like make elaborate, gigantic campaigns. They were making the mistake, of course, that I had realized then was like the people who I'm going to build a world so big and so vast that we only get to see this much of it.
Right.
But there was lots of us doing that back then.
I remember that is the way that I tried, because I tried a few times to make games out of properties that I was interested in. And I used the term properties, but back then I was just saying world. I was just thinking like worlds. Like I remember sitting in high school and I think I was using like a Mac Plus, and I was typing up like the setting and like a glossary for the Dark Tower. And I think I did the same thing for another science fiction novel series called, I did it later on though, like in college, called Hyperion by Dan Simmons. It's just a series. But I remember like trying to sort of create those giant worlds. And I was still kind of experimenting. Like my friends enjoyed playing the games. They seemed to enjoy me running the games. I wasn't quite sure what it was, or what I think besides like just waving my arms around and walking around the table and stuff, I wasn't sure why, but I feel like kind of like what you were saying, like it's almost like a phase that you go through, or maybe, or at least was for me, where you sort of learn I did the mistake first, and then I think to myself, there's got to be a better way, and you sort of go in the reverse direction, like, or at least I did later on.
That's how we all learn. What's that? Confucius says there's three ways of learning, but the best way is through experience, which is the most bitter, he always used to say.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, that's what I always say, like through simulation or real life, it's like, how else do you learn these things? You have to kind of like do play testing and try things out, what works, what doesn't work, what works for the people you're playing with. Because some players, you know, you'll get the ones who say, I want to make the most powerful character. Where's the treasure? Where's the gold? That's all they're ever focused on.
Yeah.
It's like, don't you care about the mission or the other? No, there's the gold, there's the adventure. I want to go up a level. It's like, okay. But that's fine. But you should find a group of people who like that sort of
Right.
thing. I perhaps like a different type of group, which is more into like the experience, the missions, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah. The other thing too, I remember, which I thought was neat too, was the little lead figurines.
Mm-hmm.
I loved those things. I collected those like crazy as a kid. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, look at all these cool monsters and a Nazgul and a wow. Those are, yeah. I have friends still to this day. I don't as much as anymore, but they have so many of them doing their little paints.
Yeah.
All that. It's like, wow.
I remember buying them, and it sort of reminds me of how like the technology has changed so much, not necessarily for the better, but sort of for the better. Like I just remember buying those little lead figures, and you'd have to use like an X-Acto knife, because a lot of times the mold would bleed out.
Right.
And I'd have to you'd have to carve them up. And it's so weird now to think like, so if I want a miniature, I can just ask to have one printed, or I could pay $400 and get a printer and get something probably of relatively superior quality, at least as far as detail level goes and all that. But yeah, like my buddies, I wish I had the space to like have a workshop to like paint those, or actually I wish I had the time. That's another thing, is I feel like between a job, running a bi-weekly game, and then designing your own game, that's it. My bandwidth is 100%. It's like at 110% right now. As just in the first 15 minutes that we've been talking, I get this sort of sense as I'm talking to you that in a way it and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you're sort of looking at the games in a way that is sort of beyond me. Like when you use the word simulation, or you're talking about the way that memories are created or whatever. I mean, I might be wrong, but do you have a slightly more academic? Do you think you have a slightly more academic view of gaming than perhaps like the average gamer?
Well, I'm an academic too. I mean, so I can't get rid of it from that perspective. And I've always, I actually, one of my roles in the past was like the simulation educator lead for Simulation Canada, training like tons of nurses, doctors, EMS using simulation. Because to me, simulation is basically creating an experience, a synthetic experience, something people can step into, but it still can affect people. Because again, that's the whole point, is to get people doing experiences in ways that gives them the chance to have emotions, thoughts, build skills, look at attitudes, all that sort of thing. That's a simulation. So a role-playing game is a simulation too. It's like, you know, you're stepping into a world, you're getting the theater of the mind. You might be using little figures, but you're projecting and you're trying to step in and suspending your disbelief. Just like watching movies, like, okay, I know it's not real, but I'm having fun and pretending. And we're all pretending together. It's like improvisation with a little bit of rules, but we're still having this interesting experience together. And so, I don't know if it's academic per se, but again, I'll put it this way. If you want to get really academic.
Yeah, please.
Say like again, it's all like, it's how real do you want things to be? People often think, like, especially in healthcare, a simulation requires like you have this mannequin, or you need a live patient or something like this. It's like, again, it's all depends how real you need it to be to buy into this artificial reality. I also love Philip K. Dick. If you ever read Philip K.
Mm-hmm.
Dick, he's one of
Sure.
the people I've always loved because he's all
Yeah.
about artificial realities and all that. We could talk about that because he used to build all sorts of simulations for mental health too, like how to simulate psychosis or other sorts of things and anxiety in a safe way. So basically, the more fidelity you put into something, the more real it becomes. So, for example, if I took an orange
Mm-hmm.
and I say, "What is this?" People will say it's an orange. But if I'm in healthcare, I might say, "But it's also a skin simulator. You can practice injecting things into it. It's a sim if you want to pretend it's skin." Then I used to draw a face on it, like a sad face on the orange, and show it to people. And they go, "Oh, look, it's sad." Go, well, an orange cannot be sad, but you're now buying into the fact you're seeing a face on it.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking, you're imagining it's a sad orange.
Mm.
So the more the levels you go, the more you start to buy into things. However, you can go too far sometimes and blow it all. Like, again, you can have so much simulation.
Mm-hmm.
Like an example, CGI in movies done badly,
Mm.
even though it's really advanced, like it throws me out of things
Mm.
all the time.
Mm.
I used to like the Ray Harryhausen, stop
Yeah,
animation
right.
things because I knew it was so fake, but it wasn't trying that, it was what
Yeah.
it was. So
Yeah.
I buy into it. Versus when people try too hard and you go, no, I don't like it anymore. You know, it's like also again when people do LARPing or role
Mm-hmm.
playing, they can't actually shoot a fireball. So they can do certain levels of the simulation, but sometimes better just to sit around a table and do theater of the mind because
Mm.
people can get into it even more.
Mm.
So you have to actually find the right sweet spot for whatever you're trying to do to get into these games. I'm mostly theater of the mind most of the time, anyways, and most of the players I work or play with, totally fine. Maybe
Mm.
throw a picture up once in a while.
Mm.
But do I really need a full on like
Right.
battle map?
Right.
If I was running 5e or something like that, yeah. But I run away from 5e. I mean, part of COVID pandemic is part of why I said I got back into role playing,
Mm.
and I bought Fantasy Grounds and the whole 5e sort of thing online. And all my old buddies from ages ago, we all got back together and started playing. Of course, I'm the game master, and I hated it because I'm going, I gotta keep track of this.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
condition is that? And
Yeah.
who's targeting this? And whatever. It's like each battle was so painful. It's like, no, no, how can I stop him from fighting? It's
Right.
just like,
How can
yeah.
we just get
So,
back to the narrative and role play?
yeah, narrative role playing. And again, you do need some crunch. Back to easy D6, we'll get
Yeah.
to eventually. It's like you need something to ground it. But if you have too much, it ruins it. It's like too much rules
Mm-hmm.
destroys the immersion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the rules are too much in the way. It's like, whoa, you're breaking me out of the actual mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I can roll the dice, but maybe it's only a second. Like, I know what to do versus, okay, get out the book. What is this? What is that? Okay, let me go get my cheesies and take a bathroom break,
Mm.
come back. Tension's destroyed,
Yeah.
you know, that
It's
sort of thing.
it actually reminds me, and now I don't want to get too academic. Boy, are people going to tune out when a teacher and a professor talk for an hour
Who
and a
knows?
half.
Maybe they'll get some credits for this, guys.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll just watch this.
So
Good
I
presentation.
was working with a child the other day, and a fourth grader who is coming in from another country, coming in from. So I teach people that watch know that I teach at a private French school, so a few of the children that I deal with in my English classes are second language learners, and it's very interesting to sort of watch her work compared to some of the other students that I might have in the class. So I have a couple in one particular class, and she's very much about the rigid structure of the grammar, even though she's only in fourth grade, and she kind of refuses to proceed unless each word comes out perfectly. She writes it down. She's working on it. Whereas I have other students who are much more from the hip and all about like communication, and they'll sort of rattle off half English, half French, dipping in and out of grammar and in and out of vocabulary. And that's sort of what and they both sort of enjoy it, right? So what I look for in my students is I want them to enjoy the experience, and no matter what, I don't want to turn them off to learning. And so if they're having fun in their particular learning style, I'm all for it. But it's interesting to see the difference, and I feel like what you mentioned sort of reminds me of people that are very much into the sort of the mechanics and the joy that they find in like the calculations or perhaps in beating the system or whatever, versus someone that just sort of plays from the hip and is like kind of a little bit more about just like that moment right there and just enjoying it and throwing the rules out for just a second just to sort of get through and get that quick experience. So I'm not sure what that says, but it just kind of reminded me of.
Yeah. But I think that gets back to like, and in different phases and different times, it's like, again, I don't mind a good D&D game that's pure like mechanics once in a while. It's not my preferred thing. But I remember in my youth when we used to play, because I think what you're saying about the ones who like to game the system, I was one of those. I had those books. So I used to talk about the DM's Guide and all that. And we'd always have this competition. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba originally. We had this thing called KeyCon. And there's always be this one game called the Monty Hall Dungeon. And you all had to pay 20th level characters. There was the good, evil, and neutral. And you go in. And I'd always go in and I would spend hours like preparing a character, looking for every rule nuance that could break, like was written funny. And I go in always like a 20th level anti-paladin with like infinite powers with like an unholy reaver. And you'd go in. I remember I had done a character so powerful. The entire good team tried to kill me at one point because I had got teleported there, and I killed them all of them. They're all, and then the DM was so angry he had Demogorgon show up with all the Death Knights and attack me. And I said, "Well, no, you're dead. You're dead no matter what." But I got, yeah, that was fun in the sense like it was a one shot, silly game.
Yeah,
it can have fun.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that. And I've built games like that too, where it's like, your one shot Suicide Squad type of games, have some fun. But, some people are in the mood. It's like, I don't want that. I want to like have a Cthulhu experience, an investigative one or something like that. Or it's more the adventure. I think what are the 3 pillars?
Exploration.
Exploration. Yeah.
Killing stuff.
Yeah.
And then the role play.
Exactly. And to me, it's like, balancing all of them.
Yeah.
Makes it good.
What, if I can ask, and not to put you in the spot, like what, in your opinion, like what is a role-playing game? How would you define a role-playing game as say a psychiatrist and a scholar, or as a professor?
I don't know if I could do that, but as I said before, I think it's kind of, again, it's a mutual kind of narrative process experience. It's a game of sorts. It's like a mutual storytelling game with rules that you must adhere to move the game forward or the narrative forward. And you're basically, a lot of it is improvisation and immersion into this, simulated kind of experience. That's as much as I would say it was at its core. And sorry, I'm not going to make it any more complicated than that. I think people have been doing this for centuries before they made it into games. People doing role plays and all that, and improv, and I'm sure in cultures and things going back about how they tell stories and do things.
How do you view? Do you think that there's a bit of a difference between the way that what a game master is getting out of the game versus, say, a player? Are they looking for sort of slightly different things, or do you think that it all kind of comes down to the same idea?
I would say, again, because I know there's some people I play with who have never game mastered and don't want to. There's some who do both, and some who pretty much want to do it all the time. So I think people have different things they like, just like in any sort of group or team. It's like, okay, I'll be the event manager, you be the one who does the CPR, you do it, whatever, whoever likes doing these things. But I mean, everyone's a player. I don't know if you're driving to this too, but to me, and I've always said this, the game is an experience that everyone's involved in. So it's not just the game master's responsibility to make the game good. It's everybody's responsibility to go in with some code of conduct of some sort about this is how we play. This is kind of our guidelines. This is how we work together. It's like, okay, the GM or RR or DM will make the final arbitration, but they'll always listen to us. They're not out to kill us. They're out to kind of help create this experience and arbitrate different things to help move it along. And again, usually the game master is the person who has more experience with the game, has the time to do this. But usually there's the time I think they like to world build and create the experiences, while the other players like to just have the experiences. They might like to world build a bit and contribute, but they might not feel they have the time or the energy or feel maybe, well, I don't know how to do all that. I don't know how you create all these things. The other thing too, and to be honest too, is like, I like to be a player and I also like to be a game master. But being a player, I there's this feeling about I don't feel as in control as a game master. It's like you do feel a little bit, well, at least for me, it's like, is this game master going to be a good game master? So I don't mind playing with people I trust. It's an interesting thing, but if I trust the game master to be a good game master, they're a deadbeat, I'm going to have a bad time. As a game master, it's a little bit easier. I find like, okay, the player's not so good, but I can do some stuff to manage it.
Interesting. Yeah. I totally understand that. Like I actually, I think I secretly do like to play, but the problem is that a lot of times, you know, it's hard to find a game master that matches my play style. And to be honest, there are some times when I feel like it's really hard for me to play because I think I'm always in game master mode. It maybe have something to do with my personality or my teaching or something. I'm always thinking about 16 different things, not necessarily very deep, because anybody that knows me, just ask my mom, knows I'm not a deep thinker, but I've got like 16 or 17 different things on my mind, and I sort of like the thrill and the scariness of keeping the plates from dropping, even though I'm just a little spin here, a little spin there. When I'm a player, I search my brain, and I think I overthink what to do as like a player, I guess. I don't know. And so it makes it very difficult for me because if I'm not up, I'm like, I'm just like, I want to keep going, and I feel weird as a player not. Like,
well, that's another thing about game mastering, which is, again, it's an art form and a trick thing too, which is, again, I've learned this actually from reading more on superhero role-playing games, but I think it still applies to everything. Was it Robin Law? I can't remember who wrote this, but I was learning about, you know, before the people come into the game, you as the game master should know what each of these characters is. And also think about what scene can I give them to keep them engaged? It's not like just leave it totally random. It's not like you're going to railroad it either, but like, for example, assignment danger, you know, like, you know, if you're a hacker, I'm going to make sure there's some hacking to do. Yeah. Like, I mean, whoever, I'm going to make sure there's something that each player character can have a moment to shine at least.
Yeah.
But also it's the famous back at the ranch concept, you know, from TV and movies. You know how you create narrative tension. Cut. So I don't want a player to be sitting there too long thinking all the time.
Right.
What I want to do is move back and forth. It's tough as a game master. We're talking about earlier cognitive load and how much you can handle and all that. But the key is, if that's why I like around 4 players, 6 maximum. I like 4 as my optimum number, because if you've had too many players, that's also difficult to keep everyone engaged. I know what my number is to kind of like, okay, can move back and forth, because often, what is if they want to split up?
Yeah.
You know, and they're in different locations, or even if they're in the same location, I want to make sure if you're sitting there thinking and thinking and thinking, I want to get to you.
Yeah.
And engage you.
Right.
Because that's part of keeping you in the immersion. Because I do think sometimes in games, people can just sit there for, you know, 5-10 minutes doing nothing.
Yeah.
Because the game master is so focused on it. They're saying, okay, hold that thought. Back to you.
Yeah.
Back to you. You know, it's energy draining, but that's why you also need a bio break after every hour and a half, 2 hours too, and say, okay, but yeah. But since you said, I believe you said you were in TV and movies in the past, as we were talking before. So you must know what I'm talking about in terms of like it's almost like quick
Yeah.
editing. Moving.
It's a very difficult line to walk though, and when
Mhm.
it works really well. Like a lot of people will say you don't split the party, and of course there's no such thing as anything that's always true, right? But to
But who's
me,
yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but
no.
who's don't split the party? The game master? They can't stop them if they want to.
Right. That's what I actually thrive on that. And sometimes I can shoot myself in the foot because sometimes I'll split or I'll create a situation. And what you were talking about earlier about giving every player something to do, typically in a scene, I'm always thinking about it from like 4 points of view because for me my optimal number is 4 or maybe 5. That's what I enjoy running for. Anything more than that, and like you said, I don't like the fact that people are sitting around. I want things to move, and even the people that are not participating can at least view for like they should get enough nutrients out of watching the others play for 3 or 4 minutes or run for 3 or 4 minutes, like the excitement of whatever's going on, that they don't even notice really that they're not playing. They're actually still sort of there, and then after that, their time starts to get a little stale. Like for me, I found the longer they sit and the longer I push it, unless something super climactic or super involving and engaging is going on. And what I typically do is I design all my scenes so that there are at least 4 ways to approach it, one for each player. And then typically, if one or two of them think of what to do, I'll sort of like a cell, I'll split it in half and I'll say, okay, actually, you discover that in order to get the machine to operate, someone's got to be doing this over at point A and someone's got to be doing that over at point B. And suddenly I'm cutting between the two and I'm creating this sort of false tension just through maybe a countdown or something like that. And we go back and forth. So I think it's very much like what you're describing.
Yeah. I don't know if it's false tension. It's true tension. And
Yeah.
that's the thing again, you have to remember the old serials of Flash Gordon and all
Mm.
them, you know. At the very end, it's like, and Dr. So and so is about to smash you into oblivion. Okay, you'll have to wait a week.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing wrong with leaving people at the high point. That's that what they used to I think that's what they used to call it, the back at the ranch concept, which
Mm-hmm.
is you're stuck in the jungle. Like meanwhile, back
Back
at
at
the
the
ranch,
ranch.
you know, and then okay, and then whenever something's about to come, it's like an old soap opera thing or
Yeah.
whatever else. The reason why it works is it works. It's like you're leaving people at the high tension, so they're still hooked. It's like, okay, I'll wait the 5 minutes because
Right.
oh my God, what's happening? I'm hanging by my fingers. And your one hand's going, oh, we have to go over there. Sorry, we'll be
Yes.
back. And it's like they went, no, no, finish me up. No, 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 no. You can wait.
Yes, that's really the best, and that's what I like. Is like usually there's like they talk about degrees of failure. Like if you have like a yes or no sort of or a binary sort of choice about they fail or they, it gets a little. It's not a little boring, but I mean I feel like I can do more with a couple degrees because I can cause one failure, and then like you're saying, well, but let's figure out what happens after we go back to, so and so's corner and find out what's going on over there. And then we maybe solve that. And then we get back to what's going on.
Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes if you're real fun and tricky, you can, whatever's happening over there is going to influence what's happening
yes.
over there. It's like, and it's as you fall, because that person was walking underneath, they break your fall.
Right.
Just fell
Right.
on top.
Yeah. 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 I like that. I enjoy it. And that's like part of keeping those plates spinning is like, I feel like I'm firing and I'm basically just improving and hoping my first draft actually turns out to be like an okay performance and I'm able to give everybody an exciting experience and make them happy for their choice. Like if they, whether it be a sad kind of happy or an excited kind of happy or whatever, it all kind of melts together.
Well, and again, it's this whole concept too about railroading versus sandbox versus playground. I was on a, Carl, I guess,
Yeah, I
from
do. Yeah.
yeah. So I was telling him this story too, and I remember again writing up this entire game called Gamma Meridian. It was basically Gamma World, but using the themes of this book called Blood Meridian. Don't know if
Mm.
you ever read it, but
Yeah.
Cormac McCarthy,
Yeah.
really dark. And I had this player who basically usually is totally fine with murder hobo, total destroyer, whatever. But then I found out when we started, he didn't want to play this because there were certain scenes in the book that really disturbed him.
Mm. Yeah.
So I said, okay, that won't be in there. I promise you it won't be there because I'll adjust it.
Mm.
He said, no, no, no. So he was in this mutant town, and everyone was supposed to go out to go, out into the world. It was basically Gamma World's Legion of Gold. One of
Mm-hmm.
my other favorite scenarios from Gary Gygax is basically like keep on the borderlands, but
Mm.
in the future. But so he refused, and he was this mutant guy, and he says, "I'm going to the bordello. I'm going to become a bouncer." Then all the other players decided to stay too. And so I said, that's fine. Like, again, even though I made all this, it's like,
Right.
well, I still got my world. I got my thing. We'll just go with it.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about, they're going to make some interesting things too. I have to trust the players I play with
Mm.
that they're also going to create weird situations that will be fun for me to interact with. I don't always have to come with it myself. It's like, okay, we're now in a mutant bordello. That already to me says there's lots of fun things. We're
Yeah.
going to have some like law enforcement fun things.
Mm.
I have no idea what sort of like weird things go on in that bordello. Let's just see what happens. And then it improvs. And then it'll lead to some sort of adventure eventually,
Mm.
anyways.
Yeah. I sort of agree. I tend to just sort of like I build up I frame my games with flowcharts that just typically there's sort of like flowcharts. They just start at the top, and I'll say, okay, this is the maybe the end of the last adventure, and here's maybe some questions we have dangling, and then I'll like flowchart out like 3 or 4 possible repercussions of this in different areas of the town, and then I sort of flow out and say, okay, then what happens, and then by doing that, kind of like what you're saying, if they decide not to take, if they take the path I hadn't planned on them taking, I have like an idea of what happened, and I have like a rough start. So like you said, like, okay, it's a bordello. There's got to be like, I'll bet cops bust the place up. And I kind of already, I know that stuff by just having sort of sketched it out in a flow chart. How do you prepare when you sit down to prep?
Um, a little bit like as you say, but in a weird way, because I watch way too much TV and too many movies, and I'm ready to draw on that.
Mm.
When I see a scene, go, that reminds me of this scene.
Mm.
I'll just start playing it right out. There's so much again, what was that old joke about? Here's the Bible of role playing, and now you can steal everything from any IP ever.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing about in jokes or whatever, it's like, okay, I'm going to pull out that sheriff from this James Bond film suddenly going to appear. I'll just call him something different, but he's here. And I know his entire character because I just ripped him out of the
Right.
movie.
Right.
And there he is. And everyone knows who he is, sort of, so they can already get an idea what's happening. So I don't over prepare too much.
Mm.
I have to, because you have to leave a bit of flexibility, and also because again, it depends if you're playing with people you've never played with before.
Yeah.
People you have played with many times. Go, okay, I know this group versus this group who I don't know. How will I handle that? I'll prepare a little bit more for the unknown people.
Mm.
And usually, too, that gets back to the famous, what they call session zeros,
Mm-hmm.
which, and the whole, I want to get to know you. Even when I'm playing with new people, I don't, I've seen when I've gone to some games and we just suddenly start playing, right? It's like, here's your characters and all that, and we go into it. I usually go, let's get all our names. How do you want to be called as players?
Mm.
I even do an icebreaker game,
Mm.
before we even get into the role play.
That's a good
I'll
idea.
get into the
Yeah.
whole, psychological safety stuff. This is
Right.
back to simulation in my mind. Is like, I want to build good rapport as players
Right.
before I even get into the sim or the game. I want us to know how we, get a little bit, a little camaraderie going, we're all on the same side. And to remember again, this is your player character.
Mm.
This is the player, and even though everyone kind of knows that logically, it's never hurts to remind
Yeah.
everybody.
Right.
For new players, you don't know
Right.
and how you're going to go about it. And if you want to use things like X cards or
Mm,
whatever,
mm,
it's like you can put it there. And it's like, I always go, we're going to play for probably an hour and a half. Then we're doing a bio break. And then we're going to do another hour and a half.
mm,
Then we'll have our debrief. And that's how I'm going to run it, And
mm,
like, so because you're a teacher,
mm,
so am I. And so again, I like giving like, it's kind of the agenda
mm.
generally. And this is how it goes. And any questions before we start?
Yeah.
Ready? Okay, here we
Yeah. I love your idea about running like an appetizer game. I suddenly envision like I first of all I think that's a great idea. I'd love to hear more about like what you do. But the first thing that sort of flashed into my head was sort of like the way that a lot of films started, like a lot of the Bond films started, and it kind of set the trend in a lot of action films or just in films in general. So much so that now in screenplays, like every Bond film starts with like a 2 or 3 minute quickie adventure,
Mhm.
which may or may not loosely tie into the rest of the film. And I just suddenly thought, I wonder if there's a way of running some sort of card-based game or another sort of game that may seemingly have no impact on the rest of the game, but perhaps it later does, in which you sort of figure out who's who and what's what people like, what they don't like, or get some idea or some rough idea of how they're approaching the game and what they're looking for. That feels at first like, you're sort of thinking at first like, well, all right, I came here for a game, and why are we playing cards for the first 15 minutes? And then as the game progresses, you sort of learn, oh, I get why we were playing cards, and here's one of those cards now, or I needed it, or something like that. But I just love that idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and so two things. If we go all the way back to the old James Bond game from Victory Games way
Mm,
back, most of their scenarios are actually built that way. They have always a little appetizer one,
yeah,
and then you go into the main game, and
yeah.
they would be connected too. But yeah, I was talking about too about going actually into the immersion, like we're
Mm,
describing here, is like there's a meta game or something like that, or even like things like just asking like, like what would I ask? Like, would you rather live in Antarctica or the Sahara Desert? Why? Like again, just strange things so people get to know each other. But also,
mm,
when you get that, it gives you kind of fun meta things to throw into the game later.
mm.
Not in a happy way, like people who love the cold. It's like, the ice cream machine pops
Right,
up for you, but
right.
not for you. Like something like a little
Yeah,
callback to
yeah,
why did we do this anyways? And thank you for participating.
right.
I also know like Scotty, if you've seen him run games too, I notice this is once you start the game or it's even building it. I've seen where he says, if you guys help world build a little, I'll give you some extra karma points
Mm,
for your character.
mm,
Like, okay, here's the village. What's in the village?
mm.
Go, oh, it's at a pub or something. But they're getting into it. So they feel more invested in the game
Yeah.
too. Part of what they are building. So they get an idea. This is a mutual thing.
Mm,
Yes, the game master has the rules and the game in their head and so on, but there is agency that you can influence it.
mm. And there's
Yeah.
a basic kind of payoff that we all kind of like naturally kind of seek, whether we know it or not, like in storytelling and when we're maybe involved, the sort of payoff that you don't get like in real life, but you get in fiction. You don't necessarily get in real life, but you get like in fiction or in games. And the idea of coming full circle like that, and being as a GM, like taking those things into account and then integrating them and showing the players, I've listened to what you're interested in, or I've listened to, or you've created something, like you said, that now becomes later on a part of the game, and that sense of agency and over what's happening. Um, oh,
Yeah, I was going to say too, like, so one of the things for assignment danger, not plugging, and no one has to buy it if they want to, is that is the game The Anvil. So there's
you should buy it.
so there is a
Hold on.
scenario that
You
came
should
out.
buy. It's very good, guys. He has every right to plug it. It's a great game.
So the Anvil, which I role play, did some play testing with too. It's a simulated island people go to practice being agents because I love simulation. Of course, things go. It depends what you can either just run it as is, but there's options in the game to have different types of like bad things happen. and more villains, all the way up to, if you want, not to ruin it, because who knows if they'll run it for you, is I put the Predator from the Predator series in it as well. He is there as an option if you want to throw him in. We call him the Alien Stalker, though. But anyways, but the whole thing is, part of the beginning is you're asking the players to say about their agents, do they have any secret fears or secret things, because your agency would know about it. You just need to tell me. And so people tell me, like, yeah, I had a friend who, this agent's friend died, and so because of that, I'm always going to be looking after people. Or someone's was, I have such an inferiority complex, I don't want anyone to be better than me. Or someone had, like, afraid of water and all that. Because actually on this island, there's a whole AI system that is building like phobia files and building up simulations to challenge all these people, so they'll know that. So it gets incorporated into the game as well. But it's very interesting because to me, it's not just physical challenges. I want to throw psychological challenges at the player characters, not the players. So again, one of the interesting things too was two of the player characters' fears were spiders, but an actual player was very terrified of spiders in one playtest. So I said, okay, if spiders appear, it's like, yeah, just don't describe them or whatever, but spiders are okay. So spiders did appear, but as a game master, I didn't get into all the
details,
deep descriptions of them or show pictures of them, because I didn't need to, and it still worked, and it terrified the player character, but not the player. And so that's always an interesting thing too. But again, it gets back to like asking players to come up with these interesting nuances versus, I want my +5 sword and how much gold. It's like, no, tell me more about them as a person and a character. Just give me a little, and then they like their character more because it gives them more nuance, a little bit of vulnerabilities.
Talking to you, I get this tremendous feeling like you really understand running these games, and I'm just like itching. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope Bruce asks me to play in one of his games one of these days, but I don't know if I'll be the
okay. I'm working on the Crypt of Terrors.
Yes, I do.
That one.
Yes. Oh, I'd love that.
Yes. Okay, Crypt of Terrors.
What was it then? So you love to run them, and I think I don't know the answer to this because everybody's different. Okay. You love to run them, but what prompted you? So you started Hounds and Jackals, and it's so your publishing company. What sort of prompted you to say, you know what, I'm gonna make some of these things and put them out there? Was there something that was it COVID?
Yeah.
Or you?
It was partially COVID, but it was actually before COVID, and it's because of Kickstarter and my friend's obsession with little miniatures. I mean, this is how I got into the game systems anyways. I used to play it all, but back in the the 1990s, late 1990s, I actually worked for Chaosium and some other games because I picked up Delta Green from Pagan Publishing, which was this really intense kind of like conspiracy version of Call of Cthulhu. I said, wow, they're super serious. Hey, this inspires me. So I said, Chaosium, do you need a psychiatric consultant?
Oh.
I said, because what I wanted to do was say, can I make the rules non-stigmatic? I'm tired of like, roll this and your hair turns white. Or go, it's like,
I'm sorry,
this is not helping mental health. So I said, can I actually help revamp some of this? And they said, yes. So my name's actually, I think from version 3 and up until cool. I guess not version 7 or whatever the latest one. And I think they finally dropped my name, but I've been in every version since. And then I started doing some other stuff. And then I wrote an entire book called Unseen Masters in 2001. And it won, an Origins Award from Gamma and some mental health awards. And it was basically because I tried to put in mental health aspects there too. First one's about addiction. The second one is about psychosis. Third one is about like childhood trauma. And so that was cool. And I was having a good time, and then working for a bunch of companies, and then children and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, it kind of went away for a while. Then I got into magic and illusion and did all that for a while, which was also simulation. So this is getting back to, again, I usually need something to kick me into this. And so my friend Sean showed me about Cthulhu Wars. I don't know if you've seen Cthulhu Wars by Sandy Peterson,
I've heard of it. I
but
haven't played it.
yeah, so it's basically you play factions of
Mm.
the old, great old ones and you
Mm.
battle it out. But there's such cool figures. And then I got addicted to Kickstarter for while buying games, board games, going, look at all these cool figures. So
Yeah.
speaking of space, my wife is like, oh my God, you gotta stop. And yeah, I got to sell all these things off. I got addicted. I was going, well, I got to make a game too. This is so much interesting and fun. And so I wanted to make a board game. And I'll tell you this much, making a really good board game, at least one that has complex
Mm.
thinking one, it's way harder than role-playing games for me,
Mm.
because the difference is a role-playing game can have guidelines and
Mm.
flexibility. A board game with rules has gotta not be broken.
Yeah.
It cannot.
Yeah.
And so, but it may be inspired enough to say, okay, let me make something. And so I actually started working on a thing game, but then everyone else put out a thing game before me, you know, the
Yeah.
thing.
The thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I said, well, I'll make a Night Stalker game. That guy, Carl Kolchak from the
Yeah.
70s.
That's awesome.
But that kind of, yeah, but it morphed because it said, oh, all this kind of like, I can't get the rights or I have to get the rights. Said, I'm going to go back to what other people do. Let's just go historical. And I went and did the Beast de Gévaudan, which is a historical mystery. If you ever seen Brotherhood of the
Mm-hmm.
Wolf,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's based on that legend. So I made a game, and it's a lot of fun making it. And that's when I started building. As you said, where do you get all these people? Like, start saying, who's a good layout artist?
Mm.
Who's an editor? I can't do this alone. That's part of the thing, is you need a good team of people. Even if they're not like a actual companies, like, who are the freelancers I trust? Who can I get going?
Mm.
And then so it took me a few years
Mm.
because to actually make it happen,
Yeah.
3 or 4 years to really do it.
Yeah.
And then it was done. Then COVID hit as it was all getting developed and put out. But that was okay. And then I started doing some magic things, like some card decks and all that. And in the back of my mind, I go, well, I'm going to do a role-playing game. I'm going to do a role-playing game. And I was going to do Cthulhu and all that sort of stuff. Well, anyways, my long rambling story
Mm-hmm.
was Kickstarter. It got me back into gaming, and then COVID-19 hit, and that got me back into role-playing gaming
Mm.
because we had so much time. And thanks to virtual things like we're doing right now, it's like, hey, cool.
Yeah.
I'd see all my buddies, because it used to be once a year I'd get together with them and we'd have a 3-day weekend
Yeah.
of total gaming every year. But now, thanks to COVID, it was now once a week.
Mm. Yeah.
And so it's like, oh,
Yeah.
this is cool.
I identify with a lot of that. Like the things that you mentioned earlier on, you said that you were kind of out of it for a little while and then sort of came back into it. I came back to it a little bit before COVID, probably a few years before. And it was actually DM Scotty, because I started watching, I don't know how, but it came up recommended on YouTube, like his crafting channel, DM's Craft. And I started watching that, and I started doing his tiles. And I was doing minis, and I had a house at the time. And so I had a lot of space, and I was building all this stuff. And that's kind of like what got me going, was like just thinking about it. And then I think because I was really, really teaching a lot, and I think at that point I had built up my teacher muscles, my classroom management muscles. I think I sort of regained my confidence in it, and I was sort of like, oh my goodness, and at a certain point, I kind of like, I thought to myself, oh, I could probably run a much better game than I ran 20 years ago. I'll bet this could really be something. And it was exciting, like kind of like what you're talking about. Like it just sort of like builds and builds and builds. And I'd always wanted, and this is again, like I was saying before, how I admire what you're doing. The idea that you would sort of just go out there and you'd write to Sandy Peterson and say, hey, would you want me to take a look at some of your stuff? And then it would like snowball itself into like a much bigger thing. How you mentioned, of course, the kids come along, and of course, like all of that. How do you balance that these days? Like, do you have a certain time you allot, or is it time when you have time to sit down and work on it, you work, or have you carved out a schedule?
It's a bit chaotic, but again, it's also because my children are now teenagers, and one has gone off to university, and one, they're much more independent now, which gives me more time. And I also, thanks to the COVID-19, I made my entire activities pretty much virtual. So I don't travel physically anywhere pretty much anymore. If I don't have to, I can do all my treatment online, all the sorts of things and teaching I do online. I will do some stuff in person if need be, but there's no need to. So it suddenly created some extra time for me. And so pretty much every day I do something. I don't know if you read Stephen King's On Writing, since you have a Stephen King book in the background. I don't know if you read On Writing.
I've read
if you
it.
haven't, oh, you did read it. Okay. So writers write. That's what he says. If you want to write, you got to write. You can't, you don't have to do it exactly like him or anything else, but it's like, I have this little journal. I don't know if you ever read a thing called The Artist Way by Julie Cameron.
I've heard of it. I've never read it. Everyone recommends it.
Well, again, I actually recommend it for everybody, including patients, my students, me, everybody, for a couple of things in it. So she's James Cameron's sister, I believe.
Oh, wow.
And so she's this big Hollywood person that started off. So the book's, it's supposed to be for how to become creative when you're having trouble being creative. And there's a lot of things I don't like in the book, but there's two things I like because it's very cognitive behavioral. I won't get all therapeutic on it, but these two techniques I really love. And so I do them all the time. Sometimes I'll fall off the wagons, like anything, like eating healthy or doing exercise. So one's called Morning Pages, which is where you have a book by your bed, and every morning you flip it open and you write free flowing thought, 3 pages, and slam it shut. And the purpose is it's not a diary or a journal. It's to actually get used to think, create, not think, edit, never write it down. It's getting you into the habit of think and do. Think and do. It's like you said, like, why did I call like Chaosium? Why do I call this? Because I get into the habit, like, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
Versus saying, well, it's not going to be good enough. It's like, maybe it's not going to be good enough. I don't know. But if I keep thinking that, nothing's going to happen. As her thought is like thinking, create, edit. But don't edit before you create, because then nothing gets on the paper. She speaks to all these like negative thoughts a lot of people have, like, it's not good enough, it's not perfect, I should have done this or whatever. And so it impairs a lot of writers. And so this also helps with what some people call writer's block, where it's just used to, like, I'm going to write every day in the morning. You can write, this is so stupid, I don't know what to write. You write, this is so stupid, I don't know what to write. Or why am I caring about how it's spelled? I don't know. But you do that, and I've noticed, people will tell me, and it happened to me as well, you just start noticing, you start being more creative and doing more. The second exercise that goes with the artist date, which is like once a week, you're supposed to do something special for yourself you don't normally do. That's somehow creative, that you bring creativity in. Like, okay, I really like, I see at the museum there's this Mesopotamian exhibit. I love archaeology. I should go do that. And it has to be with me. I'm taking myself on a date and getting to know what I like and just absorbing things. But it's something different than I normally do. And you try to do that every week. That's it. Those two exercises, I find, will actually help a lot of, whoa, look at the cool.
Is it your birthday?
Well, it's not, but hey, very cool. Must have done some sort of like special thing. But yeah, I find this actually is very useful for me, at least, because it just gets you into the habit that you are going to put your creativity there, and you're doing something at least every morning. And basically, where do I fit it in? I just do it wherever I can. It's like a lot of people at lunchtime in the olden days, who are those, Kafka and all of them, they just write at their lunchtime and do their thing.
Yeah.
But they just had some regular pattern. You have to build a pattern and then it will flow. And it's like when you say this is all crap, it doesn't matter. You're still writing. It's, the famous story of Stephen King and Carrie, right? For those viewers who don't know,
go ahead. Tell them. You're the guest. Yeah.
He was so depressed and upset with his situation in life way back then. He wrote the beginning of, the Carrie draft, tossed it in the garbage. Yeah. His wife took it out and saved it and got him to finish it. And that set his whole career on. But if he had given up,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have that book probably on the shelf sitting back
Yeah,
there.
you're right. Yeah, I've got that was his next. So that's Fairy Tale, and then actually
Mhm.
sitting right above it, that's Holly. Which so Fairy Tale I think was last year, and then Holly was just a month or two ago. But yeah, you're right. I mean, and talk about actually like applying himself, because King himself, I mean, he wrestled with addiction, or I assume he still wrestles with addiction. I often think that writing became his new addiction. He sort of shifted. That's what he talks about, is he will sit down and he writes for like 4 hours in the morning, takes a lunch break or a walk, and then he comes back and he edits for like 2 or 3 hours, I think is like his system. But he says that he does it every day, like even on Christmas or his birthday, is like what I've heard. So
Well, again, too much of anything is not necessarily good. It's all about balance, right?
what are you saying about
But
Stephen
again,
King?
yeah. But again, it gets back to if that's what he wants to do and his life's going okay.
Yeah.
So I'd say, unless it's causing damage somehow to someone else or himself, it's like,
Right.
well, cool. Um,
How
but yeah,
how was so just to sort of shift back here, and I want to get back to I want to get to your game. I'm so sorry about John.
okay.
Um, but so you kickstarted it, and this was not your first Kickstarter, correct? Like what? So right before we get into the game, can you tell me like what was it that prompted you to use Kickstarter as opposed to just sort of trying to self-publish it, or just get it out there? Like, was there something?
Yeah, I always picture Kickstarter as an advertising
Uh-huh.
platform, actually.
Uh-huh.
I think it's more like a little party place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did this first one, was a game found, not game, no, whatever it was. I've done three
Okay.
so far, and they've all been successful. But the
Mm.
key, of course, is I'm not out to make a ton of money.
Right.
And my goal really is as part of Hounds and Jackals, is putting some mental health stuff
Mm.
secretly woven in,
Mm.
maybe sometimes overt, maybe not so overt,
Mm.
about just getting mental health awareness out there, but through an entertaining medium,
Mm.
such as role-playing games, board games, and so on. So have I made money? No, I probably lost a ton of money doing this, but I don't care because that's not my goal. My goal is just putting out some interesting products, joining the community, getting to meet people like yourself and others to kind of, just push the field
Mm.
into cooler and cooler places.
Mm.
So why Kickstarter? Because I remember I was addicted to Kickstarter, and people look at Kickstarter, but also people it's like something people go like, well, that's interesting. And again, it's like, how do you get known? How do you get to meet new people? Um, and it's, again, since everything was like going to be PDF or printed cost through drive through RPG, it's like, it's not like I'm going to get into trouble like all these other big companies who are printing
Right.
things and always saying, yeah, we'll get it to you another 5 years from now. I just read all
Yeah.
these wonderful controversies. I said, I'll only put out things that are 95% pretty much already
Mm.
completed.
Mm.
So it's only a little bit to do before I put it out on Kickstarter. It's pretty much ready to pretty much,
Yeah.
I know it'll get done.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's more just having fun, which
Mm.
I don't know, like with my Kickstarter, it's like I'll do an update almost every day. Why the hell not?
Right.
With
Right.
some of the things, I'm just having fun. It's like, to me, another community of sorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, I'm doing it in a way that I know it's fun. I'm not taking any major risks. I'm going to deliver. So yeah,
It.
I,
I think I think we've used the word community several times tonight, and I feel like that's a little bit of an advantage that, say, a bigger publisher might not necessarily have. I feel like there's a sense of community, maybe. Like if you look at a big publisher like Wizards of the Coast, it's sort of like everything is facing toward other players, and there's very little like interaction with the main head. Whereas, with an independent publisher, such as yourself, like you have the time to make those updates every day, and they feel very personal, and they feel, they build a connection with, essentially, I guess, your customer, but it's not really a customer if you feel like the person's sort of participating and they're part of it, and they even, they can talk right back to you, and you can address any of their concerns or questions or whatever. Can you give me, I don't want to sound super Hollywood. Can you give me the quick elevator, or not quick, give me an honest elevator pitch for Assignment Danger? Like what got you interested in it? What's it about? Why'd you choose this for Easy D6, and why was it right for you to do like at this time in your life?
Well, this might not be a quick elevator pitch then.
No.
It's a story again.
No. Don't worry about it. We're
here
for stories. This is long form.
So here's the story. So I was kicking around, as I said, like, doing the board games, doing some magic, starting to do some role-playing games. And I was looking at, the OLG of D&D and all that. It's going, oh, it's so painful looking. And then all that controversy was coming out with them trying to revoke it and all this. I kept looking for what's the best system to do the role-playing games in. And lo and behold, Easy D6 came around, because I'm watching YouTubes and like, oh, that looks interesting. And then I'm looking at it and going, hey, this looks very interesting. And it's just perfect for what I like to do, because I believe what it's designed for, not to throw people off, it's for people like us who have been role-playing for a long time. So as a game master, this is perfect. As a player, it's perfect too, because they don't have to worry about running it, because it's like the perfect kind of like, this is just enough crunch, but not too much crunch. And you just, if you're a good game master with lots of experience, it's going to be a breeze, and it's wonderful and super flexible. I said, okay, this is cool. So I go, hey, Scotty, are you going to make hello, I'm Bruce.
Right.
This is great. I want to support this. Just like, again, it's like, this is so cool. Are you building things? Yeah, it's whatever. Yeah. He says, yeah. Because he's also, like you said, like the community is nice.
Yeah.
And he's a
you can talk to
guy.
him. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that he made open Easy D6, because like, are you making this an open license at some point? Yeah. You just have to wait. It's like, okay, just tell me when. Says, okay, you build your stuff. And then I would send them my stuff in the meantime. But what was interesting was I didn't actually start with Assignment Danger. I actually started with Terra Delta, which was going to be a Gamma World setting. And I was building it. And then I found I was making Wasted World. And I said, oh, I don't know if I should be doing this then, because he's doing that. And I said, like, I want to give him room and whatever. And he's so nice. Like, he was showing me Wasted World, and I was showing him this stuff. I was like, can I borrow some of this? And you can take whatever of mine and whatever. I don't care. Just credit me and I credit you. And, he said, yeah. Because he's Scotty. Super nice guy. So then I'm kicking around going, whatever. And I just take it on a roll at the beginning of at the end of 2022, as this medical director for our Veteran Affairs of Canada, all our rehab services. So I'm the medical director for all the complex cases. But while I was going through that, I had to go through all of these security checks. I had to go through all this stuff, almost like eye scans, hand scans, check. And I started going, I feel like I'm 007. And then I started watching a bunch of 007 films. And then I said, hey, wait a second. Easy D6 is perfect for this. It just, again, this is how the weird stuff is like, okay, if I'm not going to do Gamma World and I have all this stuff, it's like, D&D, no. But then I remembered I love Top Secret, and I love James Bond. And I was saying, this is super gonzo action kind of adventure stuff with karma. It reminded me a lot then about, used to have hero points and survival points and all this in the old James Bond games. Like, this is actually totally perfect. And I said, I'm just going to jump into it, because I love espionage, from Prisoner, The Avengers, like from all this Mission Impossible, love Mission Impossible, to all the stuff that's James Bond. I said, okay, let's just shove it all together and make an action adventure, modern day, with a little bit of gonzo, including, Bionic Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man, psychic powers, the whole 9 yards. And even
Remo Williams,
who you love, so he can like run on water if he needed to, and so there it was. And so and again, when I get excited, I'm just going to work on it every day, and just go wild. And part of how I keep going is I'll send my material to the editor saying, okay, and because again, I'll send chunks, and then I keep working, and then the new chunk comes like, ooh, exciting. So I'm always excited that I'm getting stuff, and I get artists involved along the way too, because I need the art. I love seeing art because it inspires me to keep writing. I was like, oh, that's cool. I better write something about that art.
Oh,
Because it's all
interesting.
to me
Yeah.
interactive.
Yeah.
Not just make the art
Yeah.
based on the writing. I'll make the writing based on the art as well. And so just give me stuff. And then there it was. And then I shoved in a psychological trauma system because there's things in the spy world. Because again, I always have to put something mental
Mm.
health in. Like The Prisoner, that old 1960s show, if you've ever seen it. One of my favorite shows of all time, where they're always trying to break them down psychologically. Or just watching people in 24, always like eventually starting to lose it because it's just too much trauma.
Mm.
So, okay, let's put that in. And eventually you can use it for other things. And again, as people start playing it, they said, can you make role like superheroes out of this? Well, I said, yeah, you can make.
Mm.
So yeah, here's Captain America. You can make Captain America. You can make Daredevil, like low level, street level superhero
Mm.
types, sure. And then somebody made a pulp version using it too. And yeah, again, so there it is. That's how it all came to be. And then because the first thing came out, I just said, okay, let's have some fun. Made contingency tables,
Yeah.
a scenario to show how it goes. I have one more little goodie coming out probably at the end of this week. It's just an expanded agent dossier where you can put all your information
Mm.
in. And there we go.
Well, that was another thing I hadn't even thought about asking, but it's something that I've been swimming around in my head is I can go to the Easy D6, like the Discord or the Facebook page or whatever. And what's interesting about a smaller publisher and uh, you're putting stuff out almost not constantly, but there's little snippets that come along on the tail end in the wake of the game itself that I thought that was really, really interesting. Like, are these things that you had been thinking about putting into the game originally, and then you're like, well, they don't quite fit, so I'll use them as an add-on? Or are they completely original ideas? Like, when I say original, of course they're all original, but are they something you had
Well,
planned on doing
it
separately?
was during the Kickstarter, which was again, if
Oh,
you get to
got it.
this stuff,
Okay.
I promise to do some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But also, again, so not all of it was filled out, but it's like, okay, I don't know why everyone likes it. And I'm not into it so much, but everyone seems to love these random tables.
Mm.
I'm not so much into random tables, but hey, I said I'll do it too, and it seems some people love it. So I said, okay, it's easy enough to do. I got enough ideas.
Yeah.
I'll just type up some random tables. But also then I said, okay, I can make a whole bunch of NPCs, characters, and
Mm.
stuff to help people at the get go. So that was the easy one. And then the um, scenario, the anvil,
Mm.
supposed to be like a 3-pager, just a simple thing. But then what usually happens is I start playtesting it and playtesting it, and it keeps growing, going, wait.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it expanded more than I planned. It was supposed to be just this little extra little bonus thing, and then it became its own book.
Yeah, I was
But I
going to
said, what
say,
the
it
heck?
is its own book. Holy cow.
Its own book with its own, like, you can use it for like a resource material. You can use it for multiple campaigns if you wanted to.
Mm.
But I said, why not? And I just said, whoever backed it, you get it for free.
Mm.
So there you go. So it wasn't exactly planned, but again, a lot of it is drawn from, where is it? Yeah, so here's the anvil.
Yeah.
But again, it's like I'm sitting there thinking, what are some of my favorite movies? And so again, I'll just tell you, Gog from
Mm-hmm.
1954, which is, Guns of Navarone,
Mm-hmm.
Manchurian Candidate, Westworld, Moonraker, Heavy Metal, The Living Daylights, Predator, and Mission Possible Fallout. So you'll find tons of these elements in this book.
Mm.
Because again, that's the thing, is if you watch too much TV like I do in movies, it's like it just onto the page as homage
Yeah.
and tribute. Hey, like The Simpsons have been doing it for like 30
Mm.
years, right? Do like all these. That's part of the think of fun of role playing. It's like, oh, I recognize that. I get it. It's an in joke.
And it's almost it's like a shortcut too, right? Like it's like a shortcut into accessing the parts of the brain or the storytelling that you kind of want to tell, right? Because it's a group of friends, a group of people around a table that are kind of like telling stories and kind of doing them in a slightly very unnatural format, in that you're like simulating in the span of 3 or 4 hours, like what might be weeks of time or days of time. And you know, the game itself is essentially a shortcut to having an adventure, right? It kind of reminds me of something that Roger Ebert said about special effects in films. Like, people would say, there's too many special effects in films these days. And he had this really interesting comment. He said, look, films are special effects. Like, there's no such thing as a cut between two different areas. There's no such thing as titles. There's no such thing as camera angles in life. Like, the thing itself is the effect. And I feel like that, it kind of reminds me of what you were just mentioning right now, like that idea.
But it also speaks to, I think, something I mentioned before too, about it's not too much special effects. It's how it's used. Does it keep you immersed in it, or pops you out of it? Like, it's just, this doesn't fit. And it's like, why? Or bad acting is going to pop me out of it. You know, like, bad acting, bad special effects, bad story. Like, you need all the nice elements mixed at the right level, keeps you going. But if it's like too many special effects, it's like, oh, you mean because it's derailing the story? It's like, like, you know, maybe someone else loved that. Who knows? But I think that's what people mean when it's too much of something. As I said, like, bad CGI.
Right. Or
it's like,
I was, this kind of blends into what I wanted to get into next, and maybe to start sort of wrapping up. But you're mentioning too much, and we were talking before about you know, not the dangers of simulation, but like that, maybe the hazards or the pitfall or the possible difficulties of getting immersed. So like, RPGs kind of create this a space for everybody, kind of where we're all kind of sharing it, and it's a lot of like ad-libbed stuff. And I know that sometimes when I ad-lib, a lot of times when I ad-lib, my best ideas don't always come out. Like, I have to pick and choose, right? But sometimes when you're at the table, and in like the sort of fever of creativity, like, you can get into like sensitive topics and like ideas. How maybe do you deal with that? Like, has it ever? It's actually happened to me a couple times, actually recently, but and I felt like awful. But like, how do you deal with situations like that? Or
it's only happened to me twice, and once was the bordello scenario I told you about, and that was dealt with before we even got into the game, because as soon as they realized Blood Meridian, forget about it. It's like, okay, man,
right.
But that's okay. It's like, I'm not going to force you into anything. And as I said before, most of the times I'm going to work with other people who I don't know very well until I get to know them well, about icebreakers, all that sort of stuff, go through things again. I know some people in the community go, X cards and all that. We don't need any stinking X cards, and go, yeah, you don't necessarily. But all you need to do is say, do you have a code amongst you guys or gals or whoever about how you will operate if things go ugly? Maybe you don't. I don't know, but it's good to have some sort of plan, just to kind of say, I don't know, maybe the person's had a bad day. Maybe somebody died in their family 2 days ago, and I said something that it would never bother them before, but it bothered them today. It's like, okay, I want to just take a break. But I mean, yeah, so the other time was this other time I was playing this Cthulhu Dark scenario. And again, it was with a player I thought, you know, there's again another murder hobo type, you know, it's like murder, mayhem, and all this. But the scenario involved like a young girl, like he had to play the father of a young girl in this scenario. And he couldn't, because he was a father with a girl, kind of similar. So just, okay, we're just going to drop the entire scenario because there was no way to like do anything else. So, okay, let's drop it and just have like, all we did was, you know, have some beverages and chat. I'm not going to force the game, because the whole point is to have a good, entertaining experience together.
Yeah.
There is no point forcing anything in a game that's going to ruin it for one person, which will then ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
And what's the point? The whole point was, oh, let's all go on an experience together that will be interesting and fun that we can talk about after. Maybe it's using horror. It's like, I like watching horror films, go on a horror scenario, whatever. But we know there is some boundaries of some sort. As I said before, like when running the Anvil Adventure and someone said, I do like spiders. Don't describe them. cool. And I said, like, if anything else happens, that's cool. So we were using, what was it, play roll? They even have a ping button on it where you go ping for anybody. It's like the X card. It's like,
Yeah.
to me, an X card, I put out X cards for free, just like fun drawings of it. Have I ever used them? No. Has any of my players ever used them? No. Do I think they're useful? Yes. Because even if you never use them, I find like, even if it's like there in your awareness, it's like everyone's like, oh yeah, this is actually telling us all we're supposed to be respectful and cool to each other, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, that's a good thing. It doesn't mean I am like, people go, they're all snowflakes if you need an X card. It's like, no, that's not what it's about at all. It's a card. It's just reminding people like, hey, as players behave. Characters, you can be monsters and whatever else, what's in your thing. But remember, we're all here as people to have a fun time together, please. So that's how I handle it. And this gets back to the simulation world where I used to teach all on psychological safety, which is pre-briefing, briefing, knowing how to facilitate the actual scenario, when to stop and take breaks, and a debriefing, which is the same as a game. It's like, before we get in there, what you need to know, just before we go in, what are the ways we're going to do it? Enter the game. When do we take breaks? When not? And let's debrief it after. Same thing. It works well. It's useful. And it's a model that existed before X cards. I know X cards and lines and veils and all that. I say, yeah, that's nice. But if I go back, like, at least 10 years before even that, simulation field had these types of processes. They were called different things, but yeah, it just makes sense. It's useful because in these simulated worlds, people can still get affected. As you said, you say something or something happens, someone can get psychologically affected by it, emotionally affected by it, because they're immersed. It's feeling real enough.
Yeah.
That these things can affect you.
Yeah. It's happened to be, it's funny, like the things that you say, like the couple times that it happened to me, it happened to me with people that I thought would be totally game for it. And it never even occurred to me because it had never happened before. And it was only actually, I should have, I kind of knew it at the time. I mean, when it happened, and I didn't know how to back out because I hadn't prepped. I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't considered the idea. I hadn't had an X card or anything like that, or just something to say. And it didn't really hit me until like a couple days later in retrospect, like exactly what had happened. And I felt really awful about it. It seems odd to me sometimes that people are so resistant to the idea. It's weird. I know the analogy is not perfect, but I keep thinking about like you walk into like a motorcycle dealership and you criticize the motorcycle dealer for selling helmets and jackets. And it's like, okay, you don't have to wear the jacket. And I guess legally in most states, I think now you have to wear the helmet. But I mean, I know people that have ridden their motorcycles in flip-flops and like a wife beater and like a no helmet. So like, I feel like it's like you're looking for something to complain. I don't know. It just.
And again, I don't know, because I just say, hey, there's room for everybody. You don't want to use it, don't use it. If you want to use it. I mean, I know I will use these things because it's useful for me. If you have a game group that's never needed, whatever, okay. If something pops up, I guess you'll think about it differently. As I said, experience is the best teacher, but is the most bitter.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's like, wow, okay, I've learned something, hopefully. I don't know, there's people, again, when I listen to the people who are totally dead set against it, I remember talking to some of these people, and then after I explained my point of view, hey, okay, I like you, I get what you're saying, because part of it is just having conversation with people long enough to actually understand what exactly are you saying. Do you hear what I'm saying? Like, are you virtue signaling?
Right.
Well, no, I'm not virtue signaling. I actually believe in this, and this is why. I mean, I'm not just doing it. But I guess they say there are people that are like too extreme the other way. Don't know who they are. But you must always use it. I don't know if you must always use it, but as I said, like for me, I find some discussion at the beginning, but how to handle this in case something happens is useful. You don't need to use an X card. but just having that kind of understanding. And as you pointed out, and as I found out, it's the players you've known for years that you find out, oops, because it's sometimes with the new players, you're way more on guard.
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah,
That's
it's
exactly
like,
right.
really? What happened?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but it goes straight. We're all human.
Yeah. Um, uh, what do you think that RPGs can be a legit place to sort of explore like those sensitive issues, like for people that are consenting and kind of interested in it? I mean, deeper issues, like in the same way that like you mentioned like Cormac McCarthy or, any number of, serious literature that explores like, can RPGs be legitimately serious in their own, given their own boundaries and their own limitations and all of
Yeah.
that?
And again, I always point out stuff I put out is not for therapy, it's for education. So, like, the stuff I put out is just to get people thinking about it. But again, when I was in my early career as a child psychiatrist, we used to do play therapy and all that, which is basically role playing. And again, there's techniques on how people would like how you get into things. And again, even like online role playing games and all that, where people would play, different types of characters or live out types of worlds they can't do in their real life in all sorts of different ways because they feel they can't do it in real life because they're being judged. But in this other world, which they feel is more inclusive, like, yes, I can play this type of character and I'm accepted. Like, okay, that's cool. And it makes them feel good. Great. Can you deal with, but again, it's very, you have to be pretty careful again about it's kind of like in the movies nowadays too, which I watch on YouTube, all these conferences, like, are you putting the game as a message driven thing to crush people with what you think? Or is it more you're having entertainment and it's going to bring up an interesting thought that, will make people think? That's cool. And then you can have a discussion and debrief. Versus, again, it's like, I think it's a legitimate thing a lot of people do where, again, it's not necessarily, I have to teach you about something. It's more, oh, camaraderie, discussion, interesting experiences. I feel I can like do this game and this is cool. And so people, someone was asking, like, if they have mental health issues, can they play role-playing games? Go, yeah. And people, like, why not? People with mental health issues can have stable mental health issues or actually say, in this situation, their symptoms are not affecting them and it's actually beneficial for them. It allows them to meet people and all that. I mean, there's many different, I think, positive things that role-playing games can do, but it's just like running a simulation or anything else. There's probably some best practice principles on how to do it in a safe way to make it work well for people, as opposed to just running something randomly, as you said, like, can offend people or hurt people mentally or insult them that they'll never want to play the game or make things worse. So the answer is yes. I think there's lots of good things you can do with it. And that's what I believe, which is why I've always that's what I say with my products. Entertainment first, subtle moving in of like, well, yeah, I'll put in something on PTSD about what the evidence says and what, here's a character maybe based on that people will interact with. What they want to do with that after, that's cool, but I'm not here to say you must learn all about PTSD. And then it's like, no one will want to play that. If it becomes entertaining, interesting, makes people think, and you put a topic in that's not like ramming down someone's throat, but more like, that's an interesting concept. What does this mean? There you go. It's like, again, one of the scenarios. Yeah. Sorry, I'm plugging an old 2001 book, The Unseen Masters. It was the second scenario I think most people loved, which is where I brought in the unreliable narrator concept. Maybe it was already being done, but it was well done, which basically one of the player characters is psychotic because they've been cursed in a certain way. And it was just showing how you're going to give messages to them and other people to kind of create a situation where this person starts believing, because it is Cthulhu land, there is some entity out to destroy the world and they have to save it. But in fact, none of that's really happening. It's all psychosis. And if they actually follow through with all this, they will destroy the world. because they're actually being influenced by outside forces. But the interesting thing is how you actually run it in a way to get the experience that the player never realizes they're psychotic.
Mm.
That's one of the simulations I used to run, which I lifted off Philip K. Dick.
Mm.
You read Philip K. Dick? Ever
Yes.
read You ever read Valis?
No, it's one of those. It's been sitting on my shelf. I feel embarrassed now, but yes, go ahead.
Great book.
Mm.
But there's a character in it called Horse Lover Fat, who's actually a psychotic delusion or projection of the main character. They tell you at the beginning, but he's such a powerful character throughout the whole thing, you forget. And like this character's like you just feel he's real. And then halfway through the book, this alien presence pops up and cures this guy, and suddenly the character is integrated back into him. It was shocking for the character. It was shocking for me the first time. I was like, "What? He's gone?" It's like, "Oh yeah, he's not real, is he?" So that's the essence I have to capture in simulations, where you'd have to actually give people a role where they think this is reality, but everyone else knows what their version of reality is, and then you put them together and see what happens. And that's versus we used to teach people like put headphones on and hear voices. No, that's not psychosis. That's like because it's a headphone with a voice. That is not schizophrenia. That is not psychosis. It's where you actually think the voices are real. You have to get the person to feel that. Then you go, that is totally terrifying. I get it now, what these people might be kind of experiencing in a better way. So, yeah. But to run that scenario too is like, I took a lot of time to make sure psychological safety, how you do it, all that sort of thing. Because again, I don't want to cause people grief or anguish doing this. But it's about entertainment, and it was based on the Philip K. Dick stories and some Ramsey Campbell stories and all that. So it had a basis and all this. And so my roundabout thing is, you could do a lot with it. But I think that first and foremost is having people become engaged in it, finding this is entertaining or fun or interesting. Because when in that state of mind, because you're an educator. So here's another thing is sometimes running a simulation before you teach someone something gets them thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because I used to tell a story about, like, tell me if I'm going on too long.
No.
Or do you want to hear this
story?
No.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, something popped up. Where was I?
You were about to tell me a story.
Yeah, I tell a story about basically where I asked people to go walking along in the forest and imagine the sun goes away and then some sort of creature comes out, and what do you do and all that sort of thing, and everyone goes it's like, and I say, okay, so the creature kills you then or whatever, or what are you going to do? But at the end of that scenario, even though it's like 10 seconds or whatever, say, so who wants to know what you're supposed to do in that situation? And everyone goes, everyone wants to know. So okay, so that's why I'm doing the experiential thing first, because now you're more open-minded and interested to want to learn more about what do you do in that scenario, versus just here's the information,
right?
Versus bringing it to life in a way, making people interested in. I think that's again what role-playing games are. Is we're doing it right. It's like I want to find out what's going to happen. What is through that door? What is going to happen when that guy hanging on the cliff is going to get back to? It's like I want to know.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned actually really rings true for me as well. One thing I've always tried to do, at least in my classes, and I think this is something stolen from like screenplays and books, but probably more so screenplays and more formal kind of like storytelling formats. I try to set so at the beginning of the class, not every class, but with some classes, I will set up an activity in which the students will fail. I'm not trying to make them fail, but I'm trying to get them thinking about how to succeed. And then they, give them 5 or 10 minutes in groups or pairs or something to accomplish a certain task, and they don't accomplish it. And then you say, okay, we're warmed up. Let's sit down. Let's start talking about what we're going to do today. And as I'm moving through the lesson, if I've done it right, little bits are starting to click with certain students who say, oh, wait, actually the warm-up is attached to what we did at the beginning. I got to pay attention because I could have defeated that one little step earlier on if I had listened. And then the students are piecing it together, and then we'll do a final kind of closing activity which mirrors the first. And the idea, though, is this time the students will either get much farther and come close to succeeding and want to sort of leave the classroom and keep working, like sort of on their own without me giving them any work or homework or anything. They may crack open the book, or they might try practicing with friends later on. And the idea is to sort of create this circular sense of like, there's a cliff, you climb it, but then once you get to the top of that cliff, there's another cliff there to climb. And you just sort of keep climbing through it. I don't know if this kind of makes sense, but a lot of stories I find are sort of set up in a very similar way. The hero fails completely, has to sort of level up, makes a small, this is hero's journey and all that, and then makes small advances, and then there's a massive setback. Everything's topsy-turvy halfway through, has to sort of restart and climb up that cliff again, and then ultimately, theoretically, succeed, like if the arc sort of fulfills itself. So that totally rings true for me as well. What are your plans for the future? I know you got. I know you. Yeah. Tell me everything. What are your plans for role playing and getting the games out and design? I know you're working on a horror game.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, it's interesting. I don't know why I always go back to my two favorite D&D modules. Was Keep on the Borderlands, but for some reason I just want to get that's going to be a bigger project. But Tomb of Horrors. You ever play Tomb of Horrors?
Yeah.
See, we're talking again about where people think, and they miss the point where it's like, oh, the DM's out to kill me. The DM is not out to kill you. But that gets back to the whole thing about good DMs versus all that. But if you ever play Tomb of Horrors, it's infamous for killing off players with the famous, sphere of annihilation right at the front door and all that sort of thing, And I was thinking, that's not the point. I think the reason why people don't realize why it lasts so long is it's actually is a horror scenario. It's almost like Cthulhu before Cthulhu came out. You can be your 15th level paladin, whoever else. You go in there, you die. It doesn't matter. If you're stupid, you die. This is scary. This is the Tomb of Horrors. If you don't think, you die. And I thought, that's cool. And I always liked that. But the one thing I wanted to go back and do for Easy D6 was make a version of it. But instead of terror, horror is going to be terror, which is more sense of dread. There's dangers and you still can get hurt right away, but you don't get immediately killed. It is more designed to be very keep you alive long enough to be totally destroyed, because that's what the villain in this script is all about. It's like, I don't want you dead. I want to totally destroy you and have you humbled before you're dead. And I'm going to scare you to death pretty much if I can. So it's going to be kind of like more of a haunted house kind of thing with a whole bunch of 1970s favorite horror stuff in it. Or I've been posting some art already on.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, you're soliciting for opinions on the look and feel in that right now, I guess, aren't you?
Yeah, to make it a little bit different from Assignment Danger. It's got a look and feel, but this one I want to make like kind of a spooky cross between like a Cthulhu D&D kind of tribute. And got the map already done. I got a good idea about most of the creatures. Now I'm just writing it up, making it happen. As I said, when the art pops in and go, yeah, that's cool. So maybe I'll make a little change here and there. So there's that. And then hopefully I will keep expanding Assignment Danger a little bit more. Everyone was asking for like an X-Files kind of supplement. So I'll do that. But I don't know. Again, I always kind of say like, what are people doing? Collaborations, things of that nature. Who knows? I just kind of, like I say, I go with the flow and enjoying it. But yeah, that's my immediate future. But my goal is just to keep on meeting people like yourself and so on, and just having fun in the field.
Mm. Well,
Am I
Bruce,
freezing up?
a little bit, but I'll say this. Like,
Sorry.
I think this is, oh, it's fine. I think this is great. Like, it's been a very smooth Zoom call here until like the last 30 seconds. So I wouldn't really worry too much about it. And what's odd is that sometimes when it freezes up, usually the audio is like crystal clear. It's just the video for some reason. I don't know. But I do want to say thank you so much, Bruce, for agreeing to come on. Again, like I meant it. It been following your progress has been inspirational to me. It's not always easy. I think when I'm writing stuff, I just sort of feel like, oh, I'm writing this stuff, but I'm getting it to a couple people, but nobody's really seeing it right now. And seeing like what you know, and actually getting this in the mail, and you kind of, we were talking again about community, and you like answering when I comment, and then answering my messages and all that stuff. It's really it's been helped me out with my own progress. So I highly recommend, if you haven't checked it out, you should do yourself a favor and go to DriveThruRPG and get yourself a copy. It is obviously compatible with DM Scotty's Easy D6, and it's stylistically, man, it fits like a glove. I love that. So I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. If you're like me, James Bond, Remo Williams, and the old like espionage films and the old like pulp stories, you're gonna really get a lot out of it. There's a lot of nuggets in it as well. It's chock full of espionage goodness from the 70s and 80s. So Bruce, thank you once again for coming on the program. I very much appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing your next project when it comes to fruition and is published. We seem to have lost him there for a second, but I am going to take us out with the outro sequence. That was very good timing. Good night, everybody.